y dos, y dos, una, y dos, una, y dos.
Hello and welcome to Cortesnyc Livestream, the podcast.
This show broadcasts out of New York City.
We are your hosts, Cortesnyc,
And Carla de Puerto Rico.
and on this show we talk about art, creativity, city life from a Latino perspective. I'm a visual artist,
And I'm a singer.
and this is episode 89.
As always, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and Spotify, and also on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
This is a special episode. We have an interview with Meresone of 5 Points. We talk about our memories of 5 Points. For anybody out there who doesn't know what 5 Points is, 5 Points was the largest aerosol art museum in the world at a time.
And it was located in Long Island City, New York. It runs from the early 2000s until 2013.
Yeah. So if you don't know about 5 Points, just Google search it real quick. 5POINTZ. And let's get on with this interview.
We just look at all the hard work our fine young lads is doing down in the 5 Pints.
What's going on? Because one day you're happy, you know, you're proud of me. Now you're,
We can do 17 more sections. 17 more episodes. There's a lot of fucking cops up here. I'm glad I ain't speaking.
So once again, I have Mears back on the podcast. As always, this is Long Drives with Mears.
Yeah, we're heading up. We're heading up to Alaska now.
And I brought my recorder on. Carla's in the back seat. Say what's up, Carla.
Hello.
And as always, we're having a graffiti master art talk. We're talking shop with Mears on a long drive. And for this episode, I wanted to talk about 5 Points, Mears. You know, everybody knows there's an ongoing case. We're not going to get into the whole case thing. Everybody knows that there's a case, blah, blah, blah. But I want to talk about 5 Points, the memories, the history, the beginnings, the highlights, the golden years, the best moments. It's beginning to get harder and harder to talk to people about 5 Points and for them to even remember what I'm talking about. I'm painting in different locations and people talk to me and I'm like, yeah, and I'm from New York and I paint in New York, and they're like, yeah, and I'm like, yeah, you know, remember 5 Points? And they're like, what? And I'm like, oh. People are beginning to, it's you know, there's so much information out there. People are bombarded with so much media.
And they're misinformed, or
That too.
A lot of people don't. A lot of people think 5 Points is coming back. A lot of people think that because the certain entity is trying to name his towers 5
Exactly,
Points,
exactly.
that it'll be back, and it's not. It has nothing to do with 5 Points will never be back.
And they confuse the idea of 5 Points with the Bushwick Collective or other things, other graffiti projects or other graffiti jams. And 5 Points was more than a graffiti jam. It was more than a permission wall. It was more than just a group of artists. It was a movement. It was a community. It was a location. But why should I say it? I got the man himself right here who can say it all. The curator, the originator. He originated this shit of 5 Points. I got Meresone in the house to tell me all about 5 Points. Where you want to start, Meres? How do you start it? How would you start the 5 Points story?
I'll start off by saying it's been a pretty insane ride, even to today, and ongoing due to the legal nature of how it's turned and how we've had to make history, you know, through courts as well as through the actual creation and building of the project. But it's been a great ride. It's one of the things I've done in life where I jumped in without any kind of thought, expectation, or idea of what or where it would go. I was introduced to, at the time, Fun Factory in the mid-90s, 94, and the reason being is that in switching to piecing and wanting to explore the craft of muralism and piecing and productions, I knew that to pull it off, I would need a legal wall, because there's only so much you can do illegally.
And back then, for people who don't know, there was no Bushwick Collective.
There was none.
There weren't graffiti jams.
No Welling Court.
Nothing.
No centrifuge. No JMZ walls. Nothing.
I mean, for you to imagine having a legal wall and blast your music and celebrate the fact that you have a legal wall was ridiculous back then.
Yeah.
The last thing you wanted was attention.
And I got news for you. Even if you were able to go get a legal wall, the art form was a little more aggressive at the time. You could get robbed.
Yep.
Quickly for your paint, or jumped or whatever. So, the street art game would more than likely not exist at all back then.
Back then, if you saw like two artists doing a graffiti piece, you didn't approach them unless there was a problem.
Yep.
So you painting as a graffiti artist, if you were approached, you were not approached. You were ignored. People would walk past you. They didn't want to deal with you.
And you sure as hell didn't leave your cans all laid out beautifully for everyone to see your catalog of inventory.
Your full palette.
Yeah, which is done now. No, it was a crazy period of time, and I had asked somebody, because I didn't know anything of Fun Factory, and somebody said try Fun Factory, and I went, and I met the gentleman who ran it at the time, and I believe that's where I met you at Fun Factory. Yeah. And where I saw you do your cuts and stuff, and that helped me out a great deal in doing my first productions. But definitely was a weird individual, and the fact that he ran that program, I can't fully understand to this day why, being that he wasn't an artist, and it started out an anti-graffiti program, which turned, I think he was more excited at the idea of running something that would piss off the police and because he was anti-establishment,
right,
than really a lover of the murals. So
right.
But for whatever the reason, and I'll never know now. I mean, he's no longer with us, and we have to only guess. You still got to give him his credit for doing it. And I painted the Fun Factory, and like I said, it was a really aggressive time. So even running that at the time, he had to deal with a lot of riffraff and beefs. Yeah. And there was issues. Something happened. The landlord had a falling out with the guy, and it was asked to leave. And when he left, it started a huge controversy through the papers. They were arguing about him, and the owner said about the Pat and whatever. And then the owner had made a statement: "I'm not against the graffiti in the building. I just don't want the gentleman that was running it. If anyone else wants to step up, be my guest."
Now this whole thing with the Fun Factory, this was early 90s to mid 90s.
Yeah, 97 I think it died.
Yeah.
98.
I was painting there as well back then, and I can definitely echo what that time period was like. I could definitely echo to you what Fun Factory was like. It was riffraff. It was a few legal walls throughout a factory complex, but the factory wasn't like the entity as an entirety. It was like, oh, you can paint on this wall, but let's walk around the building. Maybe you could paint on that wall. But it wasn't like the entire building was looked at like one big project or one big collaboration, or and definitely the level of
it was a Amish quilt.
Yeah.
It was not organized. It was just
and the quality of what you threw up didn't really matter. I mean, you could literally go up and put throw ups and walk away. Or just cop tags somewhere and just walk away, to doing a full production if you wanted to. But
I think
it didn't attract artists. That's my point.
I think there's a few things I want to touch on. It's important to realize that he wasn't an artist.
Right.
So when you're not an artist, you really don't gauge artwork the same way another artist can. When you're not an artist, you also don't command the respect of an artist the way that an artist would, because they gauge that artist and their abilities or their curatorial ability or whatever, and it commands a different appreciation. So, he had a lot going against him.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair to what that time period was, I just said it didn't attract artists. Yeah, it attracted graffiti artists. It attracted people who wanted to better themselves, but at the same time, what I mean by that is it didn't attract people who saw it as a career necessarily.
Well, that was the age of graffiti's bad.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the Koch and Giuliani, graffiti's a plague. Graffiti causes every bad thing in the neighborhood. Now, it's almost ironic that it's the total opposite. Real estate looked at the plague that was so bad and said, hey, it's attracting people and we could utilize it to gain money for ourselves.
But they still want it for free.
And that's where Wynwood is born. And
Exactly.
other programs which I won't mention. So yeah, no, it's funny.
All right, so you come into the picture. Mears one finally says, I'm gonna step up.
Well, what happened was it closed, and it was closed for, I believe, several months. Nobody was like jumping up. And at the, when it was Fun Factory and I was enjoying, pushing my craft and doing characters and things like I would never do a character illegally. If I have an option, I'm going to do a piece.
Right.
So there I was pushing my abilities to do backgrounds. And the guy who ran it, along with not being an artist, was a tad bit antisocial, if you knew him.
Right.
And didn't really like to deal with people. So when he started to see I interacted well with people at the time, he would be like, do me a favor, can you just give them a spot outside? And
Right.
And I started to kind of help him along. And then it came a point where he started to develop, a little bit of jealousy, because people would start to just come to me now and say, hey, and he was feeling threatened. And at the time, I remember I said, listen, this is your thing, not mine.
Right.
I was helping you. You're starting to act a little funny. I'm going to step away. And I stepped away. And that's when, after I stepped away, he had some sort of argument with the landlord. I think it was due to somebody had climbed on one of the roofs to bomb, and then they broke through the ceiling, the skylight, or something happened, and the owner said, you got to get out. Kicked them out. And I took over. I think it was a Tuesday. Yeah, it was a Tuesday. I met the landlord at 5 Points. I was given the keys to the office. He basically was like, no pornography, no explicit, and no gang stuff, and
Right.
you're good. I said, awesome.
And with that being
Tuesday,
said, 5 Points was born.
So Tuesday, 5 Points was born on a Tuesday. I went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, swept, cleaned up the loading dock area, painted a couple of the tags off the walls and whatever. And he showed up, I think, Friday, and he's like, what's going on? I go, yeah, we're gonna, we got it, I got it. He didn't know that I had been planning from that Tuesday when I got the keys, making phone calls all week.
Right.
The first weekend. And that weekend, we did an event, and I believe I had about 30 artists came out. And these are all artists that I met through the years of piecing illegally in different spots that I exchanged contact with, and I reached out, hey, come paint, I'm running this spot. And we did our first event that Saturday, and now at the time, to have 30 artists out was insane.
Yeah.
Because on a good day at Fun Factory, you had maybe 5 or 10 people painting.
Yeah.
Maybe on a good day.
No, it was a skeleton crew at Fun Factory. At least when I painted there,
It was never that crazy.
No, it was never an event. It was still random people painting here. You would bump into somebody, and you'd be scared. You'd be like, "Oh shit, I didn't know you were here."
Yep. And I remember the landlord that came the next week, and now the landlord was very scarce there. I guess in the beginning because he didn't know me and he wanted to gauge me.
Right.
He showed up a few times,
right.
which was like 3 times more than half
the rest of the
years. And he came after the weekend and was like, he saw that about 30 new pieces went up, and he's like, oh, okay, I see you were planning, all right, and from that moment it was good. And
what was your objective at that time?
My objective was to just, I wanted to create. I didn't want anyone to go through what I had to go through. I wanted to create a legal outlet for anyone to paint. So whether you sucked horribly, or you were amazing, or you just wanted to dabble and learn the craft, you would have a spot. And that was my intention from day one. And that's partially due to seeing how hard it was to get walls and how hard it was to,
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into how that objective evolved eventually, where you became a curator, you became more of a connoisseur of this movement. You know what I mean? Because it developed and it evolved as different talent came and it grew bigger. But at that moment in time, in the beginning, your objective was
just to offer a free painting space for everyone. I wanted something that wouldn't be favoritism, that wouldn't be my boys, only Queens guys. No, wherever you're from.
And that's where the 5 Points
and 5
name
Points,
came from.
I did want, when I remember starting, I was like, okay, I got to come up with a name. I don't want to come up with a name that has any idea of graffiti in it.
Gotcha.
I don't want to, because I didn't know exactly what I wanted.
The Get Fresh Factory.
Yeah, and I didn't want to label it. I wanted to be able to grow, you know. And
Hippity Hoppity Factory. I could give you names for this. Hippity Hoppity Factory.
And another factor to realize too is that I, in my growing up, have dabbled obviously with graffiti, but I used to rhyme a little, and I'm not trying to be a rapper, but I enjoy it.
You rhyme a lot. What are you talking about?
I've been on tracks.
You rhyme more than Carla.
I performed, etc. And I also used to breakdance, and I
still do.
I figured as I started to develop and grow with 5 Points, I started to go, why not? And I would go to open mics. I would go to b-boy battles. Why not bring it all in one spot? Why not bring it home? And that's where I said, you know what? 5 Points. 5 boroughs coming in one point to create together, and 5 elements of hip hop. You know, if you think about it.
That was dope.
So, and 5 Points it was, and it's crazy. Not only that it got so big, but it's a brand. It's a recognized brand that, like Adidas or whatever, you know. So it's awesome to see how far it's grown from a spark to where it is now.
So let's go through the 90s into early 2000s. You're at 5 Points. You got people that coming, showing up, piecing. You hollered at me. You were like, yo, let's go, come through. And I was like, what? You guys are really doing this? What is this? I hadn't heard about you doing anything at 5 Points for a while. I didn't really know what had evolved out of it. I didn't know that Fun Factory had really become this other thing. Years passed by, early 2000s. You're still there, you're doing it, you're strong in it, it's evolved, you got b-boys, you got breakdance, and you have people showing up. Then I show up and I look at it and I'm like, wow, what are you doing here? This is crazy. This is a movement now. Now you have events. Like I was like, you really doing events here? Like, back in the day, I maybe had an art exhibit there, but it was never an event. I might have rented a space in the building just for an art exhibit. But then I see you doing these outdoor open air events. I'm seeing the quality of the productions actually becoming productions. I'm seeing the styles not only being local artists, but also being West Coast artists, being European artists. What was that like? What was that time period for you like? Early 2000s, like once it started turning around and.
Well, what happened was, I also had a few times I've had wars. There was periods of time where full wars where people would, and just come and destroy murals for no reason.
You talking about within the graffiti culture?
Within the graffiti culture at 5 Points, and it's a setback, but it's also a full 360 kind of cycle, and it humbles you and it makes you understand that as much as you have, it can be taken away, and keeps you humble. When those wars slow down, I think it probably started with an individual piece. I can't remember which one, where somebody, it might even been myself, where I was like, yo, I want to get sicker stuff here. Let's push the bar. And due to the fact that graffiti is so competitive in nature, if you kill it and do something insane, the next guy's gonna want to do something insane too.
Yep.
And there were several factors to why everything grew so much. The size of it, the fact that there was so many pieces on the building. There was, I'd say probably close to 1,000 between inside out, all over the building. There was also the location. It was located off of the 7 train. When the 7 train, not only was it located off the 7 train, but it is the first thing when the 7 train surfaces above
Exactly.
the ground that you see.
It's like a welcoming.
Yeah. So whereas you could be on an elevated train line, and it's all background noise, all the rooftops, and then maybe you'll catch one building that's all pieced up,
Yeah.
and you're like, wow. As opposed to you're in darkness, and then as you see sun, and you start to look out the window because you come above ground, and the first thing you see is a building, and you can see all 4 sides of the building because it has
Exactly.
a hard curve.
Yep.
And because of the curve, it forced the train to slow down dramatically, so you really were able to take the time to enjoy looking at the building. Those factors, the competitive nature of graffiti, the location of the building, and the scale of the building, it made sense that artists and their egos and their pushing the craft would make them want to do a better wall. And as I started to realize that people were coming from all over, and there's artists that I never even heard of coming from all over the world and wanting to save up money and to do this one production that will represent them in New York on this building, I started to realize I'm kind of like a real estate broker. and I could kind of offer better real estate and push, and there'd be, I gotta tell you, there would be, I can't even tell you how many times I could count on my hand, an artist that would save up to come to New York, right? They had the idea, all right, we're gonna stop, we're gonna do a piece of 5 Points. I also want to stop by and do a piece of Tough City. I love to do a piece of whatever, this place, and then shop and whatever. And they would call, they would email me in advance, hey, I wanna, and I say, send me some photos, let me see what you do, blah, blah, blah.
Because you now, this is now you in the thick of it, having to make some decisions, and that's what turned you more in the curator role where you had to make decisions.
Yeah, well, because of the limited nature of space, even though we had a lot of space,
right?
The amount of people that would come to paint, I wanted to start to rotate the walls in a manner which would push people to better their walls so that it would have a longer run. And
you kept track of the runs. You were
took
very
photos of
aware.
everything.
You were very aware of the runs. You were very aware of how long something would run. You were very aware of, conscious, even if it was in the back of your mind, of, you know, who did what, where, when, how.
It was very planned, but yet very organic too. And,
yep.
I say it in the sense that a kid could come at night and just destroy a beautiful wall that I would have loved to see last for 5 years, and some idiot rags it.
Yeah.
And then I'm forced to change it now. And so it was partially organic and very planned.
Yeah.
Everything was organized. Nothing was a free-for-all. Everything had to be asked. And I started to develop a long-term collection. Like when Lady Pink did a piece, she killed it. She did the Mother Earth, and getting her to come out there is hard to none. So I wanted that piece to last. She got a spot that would, last a while, and nobody ruined it, and it did. It was 7 years.
Let me ask you this. Just rewinding a little bit further back. What was it like? So I'm sure that eventually when 5 Points became the 5 Points that everybody knew, that everybody recognized it was 5 Points. I'm sure before you had, I'm gonna say the word foreign, but what I mean is that somebody not from New York, an artist not from New York, come to the 5 Points location, come to you and say, I want to paint. I'm sure the first ones didn't say, this is 5 Points, I want to come paint at 5 Points. I'm sure the first ones were like, hey, I heard I can paint here.
Yes.
Can I paint here? So when was the first time that somebody actually came to you and said, I want to come paint at 5 Points? When did you feel that? Do you remember that feeling of the first time when people actually came for the name?
I'd say...
Doesn't have to be a date,
when we got around mid-late 2000s, it was starting to really buzz off. And then when the stairs fell,
right,
and the threat of it potentially being gone,
yeah,
when it wasn't, and we came back, it was an explosion.
That's when people
Everybody
really
was like, I took for granted what I could have painted, and it's grown to be so large, and I'm not making that mistake twice. And people started to really push the boundaries, dude. I'm talking like museum quality. That place was a fucking museum. And
That must have been a different view for you as well. And now you're getting a different reception.
Dude, I was there.
Different interaction with people.
It's very, I spent almost every day of my life there for 12 years. There's very few things that can bring me back there every day and not bore me after that period of time.
Gotcha.
That place, it almost, towards the end especially, when you get there in the beginning and you do the drive around, you appreciate it like it was the first time every time. It was. There's just so much to take in. You know what I mean? And one day you may spend 20 minutes looking at one mural that the next day you bypass. Dude, I'm 46. I've been in New York my whole life. There's not a lot of things in New York that have been able to woo me like that. And that was one of them.
At that time, I'm sure, when you have all this global attention, then did you then get the wave back, the flow go back now to the local artists maybe getting a little jealous and questioning their role in it? Did that happen? Because I'm sure, you got outsiders and you got the locals, and you got the locals and you got the outsiders. Like, it's like this wave.
I think
back
it
and
was.
forth.
I think it forced New Yorkers to step up too. That's why graffiti is a great thing. It's a competitive beast. So New Yorkers like, wait, this is our town. We're gonna do a fucking sick production over here and show you. You know what I mean? And in all reality, it connected a lot of dots, friendship-wise, for writers.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like,
I saw it firsthand.
You're a Bronx writer. You're a New York writer. Yeah, blah blah. But guess what? You meet a guy that's sick from Spain. You give him your number. Now you go to Spain. Guess what? He's looking out for you.
Exactly.
So, I think it was everything was a good push. It was like a domino. It was like a fat guy tripping on a hill. Try to stop him once he starts falling. You know what I'm saying? He's taking every rock and tree and playing with him. And that's...
I got a painting in my head now.
There we go.
Falling down a rock.
Better make it look like your graph, or I don't want to see the show. So that's the thing where you got to take the snowball and let it fall and kind of embrace it and watch it turn into a landslide.
I mean, this is that little bit right there that you said is a really interesting little bit of advice and a warning for people out there who might want to try their own 5 points and try their own art collective and their own legal, graffiti spot for graffiti jams. It can become, you don't know what it's going to become, and it's a leap of faith, and the unpredictable might happen. It could become nothing.
Follow your dream.
Or it could become everything. Yeah.
Follow your dream first and foremost, and you got to understand, I did it genuinely out of love of the art. I didn't do it for gain of Mears One. I didn't look at 5 points as this. I'm gonna utilize this to make me bigger.
Yeah, you could have called it the Mears One Factory.
I did it to make the movement bigger.
Absolutely.
The movement that I love and enjoy. And when you do things unselfishly, it does come back and benefit you. I believe, in our case, in our fight, and I'm sure tons of writers. Oh, he's cashing in, making. Dude, when they whitewashed 5 points, I was broke. Whatever we generated.
Still kind of broke.
Yeah, whatever we generated from 5 points.
Yeah.
I put into it. I invested in a man's building that wasn't my building.
Yeah.
We built the walls on his building. We fixed the building was dilapidated and beat up, and I was thankful for it. It was still beautiful to me.
And you know what's funny? Some of these like diehard New York graffiti artists might even call that naive. But that separates passion and drive and vision from people who are just day to day trying to get theirs.
Yeah.
And you were beyond day to day. I mean, I saw it. That's the only reason why I even got involved. You don't think that there's other graffiti jams out there and graffiti collectives that, the only reason why I even...
No, you're a stern guy. I know. Believe me, I know. Watching me and knowing you for years, you're not a fanboy. You're not jumping on something because you really look at it, you gauge it, and if you're in fully. If you're not, you're just not.
And I saw it. I saw what everything you just said, connecting the dots, bringing people together globally. Everything from the graffiti masters to the youths to the future. Everything from the old timers that probably don't even understand. They probably never even understood that they would, in their age, find the 5 points. Who tells you that when you were burning subway cars back in the day, one day some crazy guy's with an idea is gonna start a fun, this big factory, and then it could be coming to this 5 points, this like mecca. You know what I mean? Who would even dream of that? Like that they can go and have, old timers day or whatever.
I gotta tell you, speaking of one of my more enjoyable, I would love to see these guys get together because it was like reliving their youth, and you see these 50-plus-year-old dudes getting together and telling the stories, and it was like you could just jump right back into time. That was a highlight of Vibrant.
How often did you do those?
It was a year, once a year or 2 times a year, I think it was. I tried to promote it, and then as we got more organized, and later on Marie, my partner, who got involved, was very organized. We started to make calendar of events and really have meetings and had a staff, and we would sit and plan out a whole summer's events before the summer started.
Right.
And then because she's amazing with press, would reach out to all the press circuits, and they would publish. Time Out New York would publish our calendar, and that was awesome and epic. It grew 50-fold more than I could have ever imagined it to, and I'm so glad, and I want to definitely see the movie one day, because I know there'll be a movie about this shit.
Yeah, man, and I'm going to be Tom Cruise probably will be too old to play me.
I want to give another example real quick so I don't forget. Like, even aside from graffiti, like, I'll give you an example. I knew this woman, she brought her daughter to 5 Points, and she was a cute, shy little kid, and became a part of my, what I would say, family, which is what I think I've lost with the building being gone. Not that I've lost connection to them, we still stay in touch, but not as frequent, where they would come but this young girl who was a shy kid and not a graffiti writer, but loved the graffiti, and her mom loved it and loved the events. We did the events, and that brought her, and she was lured to, and she became a DJ herself. And now she's a beast, DJ Pearly. And it's like, 5 Points is gone, but I watch her grow and battle, and she's becoming one of the sickest female, DJs. And it's amazing to watch her journey unravel and grow. And it's all from a little seed. It all is relative, That's the part that I think a lot of people out there, even some of the graffiti culture out there, has a misconception of what 5 Points was versus, let's say, what a Bushwick Collective or a Wellington. And I'm not just shouting out Bushwick Collective for this. I'm not hating on them, but it's different. I'm just pointing out the differences. You're never gonna have an old timers day in the Bushwick Collective. They're never gonna be like, hey, let's take all these walls down and give the old timers, their time to like tell their stories, show their styles, and relive, And you don't have another amazing part of 5 Points. 99.9% every day you see somebody paint. That's not guaranteed in any other mural program.
No, you'll see everybody drinking in the other places, but you won't see everybody
it's not the
painting.
same.
Yeah.
And I think the others get viewed like a museum, whereas we were like a museum with a workshop type of atmosphere.
Yeah.
Where you could actually engulf yourself into it.
Yeah.
And that's what people love. It's great to see a full done mural. It's another whole thing to see the process and to see how an artist approaches a wall. And my girl said it, and she used to love watching, like when I step back from a wall, I'll tilt my head back sideways to look at it, and other artists will fix their pants or scratch their head.
Everybody has their own.
And you get to not only see the technique, the intent, and the process of an artist. That's amazing. That's something that museums don't offer that we had.
Yeah.
You go to the Metropolitan Museum, you're going to be ooh-ahhed and walk away looking at some beautiful shit. Can you imagine going in there and seeing Picasso work on a painting?
Yeah.
The feeling you'd have, or, Michelangelo or whatever. So Although I wouldn't want to see them working on painting now; it'd be smelly. But you know,
No, but that is a big thing about 5 Points. A reason why I wanted to have this conversation, this little bit storytelling time with you, is, you know, some of this is not out there. Some of this is not told. We've said it a million times how amazing 5 Points was, but to hear it from your own voice, and right now just having this little conversation, this little brainstorm of like, what do we remember about 5 Points? I mean, for me, what I remember, another thing that was big and special about 5 Points was I could go there and paint. I painted there over a dozen times, over decades. And every time is a different time. Different weather, different climate, from the iciest colds where I remember almost losing a hand to, you know, the hot rain with umbrellas while painting, snow, sun, drenching, hot suns drenching in sweat. Day and night, nighttime with the lights, daytime with the blazing sun, early morning because we had to do it early morning. That's the only time we had.
I slept in the office. I slept there at nights. I'd sleep in the office, have a rat poke his head through the ceiling of the roof, like whoa. And then later in its peak moments of 5 Points, when you did have all the tourism going through and all the unexpected spectators, that was an experience in itself that I had to get used to, and it taught me as an artist to be more open to the public. I'd have grandmas come up to me and ask me questions, just curious, and I was already aggressive, like what are you asking me all these questions for? Well, who are you? What do you want from me? And then I had to accept it, like, no, they just want to know, they just want to understand. It's funny how you touched base on that. That was a huge, I'd say that's a huge changing point for the art form in New York City.
Yeah,
a lot of artists were on that defensive kind of mentality. If somebody asked them questions or approached them, and weren't as outgoing. And the 5 Points project allowed that alien, you know, the two different alien cultures to kind of intersect and interact. And it made a lot of muralists more comfortable talking to people due to 5 Points. I think that's an insane point you just made.
Yeah. No,
because, you know, everybody has that I'm watching Mean Grill on. Who are you? Why you ask? What do you want my paint? You know, and it enabled it to be a comfortable environment to paint and feel comfortable and to be able to meet and probably lined up tons of artists with tons of potential buyers or future fans or future supporters.
Yeah.
I will say also the in the whitewashing of 5 Points in the finale and the abrupt way that it ended, it really showed me how that building was so much more than art being destroyed.
Yeah.
I worked at the World Trade Center. I knew a lot of people there. I witnessed 9/11 and how the Twin Towers being destroyed abruptly, surprisingly, shocked the not only city of New York but the world. The 5 Points whitewashing was a shock to a lot of people of New York City
and around the world.
But you know, not as big of a ripple, but it really blew my mind. It was probably one of the worst funerals I've been to. It was a very.
So this was in 2013.
2013. To see the energy and the reaction that the building had on people, like you could almost tell a first-time viewer when they'd come around the corner and start bugging out, like you know.
Well, we got a first-time viewer here. Carla experienced it at his heyday. She was fortunate enough to see it before it got whitewashed.
Dude, people.
Carla, why don't you give us what was your impression? Just give us quickly your impression of when you first saw it.
Yeah, it was like nothing I've seen before. Even though back in Puerto Rico they started, I think, because of the influence of what's happening here in New York, they were starting to create this type of festivals where people, artists could go and express themselves, do graffiti, but not only graffiti, also street art. Because back in 2013, before I came here, that's when I met Cortez, there was a festival in Puerto Rico that it was called Santurce's Ley. And it was kind of like a hip-hop festival itself, and a lot of artists, graffiti artists, street artists, muralists will come out and will do walls around the city of San Juan. So compared to that, I had an idea already, but then going to New York, where it's a different setting, and you expect things to be a little bit more urban, but I don't know, I just felt like it was more like a city with a lot of ladrillos and, you know, like you don't expect to see walls to be full of art, at least for me. So then when I came and I saw it, I was like, wow, this is very impressive. And to see the whole building covered, that was really, really impressive as well. And that was in August 2013 when I came here. And then November of that year, that's when the whitewash happened. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it, because it was a couple of months ago that I was there. I was watching. Everything looked so lively, because when I came also, when I came also, I saw a lot of people walking around, a lot of kids, artists painting. So it was cool to see kind of like a community and an event happening, and kind of like movement, and, you know, people sharing stories and sharing moments together. So yeah.
It was the white of the walls was as if you looked at a mirror. Everybody looked like the white of the walls.
Yeah.
It was a very
Yeah.
very crazy. It was so insane in a matter of 24 hours to see the yin and the yang of not only the walls and the people and their spirit and their attitude. It sucks that I do remember the murals and the beauty of it, but equally the day of the whitewash.
Yeah.
Right.
And that sucks. That's something that will stick with me forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I knew that at that point a community was lost. Not only art, but a community, and was robbed of something that was theirs. And a big part of the reason why I continued to fight after its destruction, to recognize that it was wrongdoing.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll be honest, on my side, from my perspective, when it got whitewashed, I got a bunch of messages from people, online, asking me, hey, what happened? Hey, this, that, and the other. Because they just knew over the years of me painting there that, it was a huge loss. Like, they already knew it without even knowing the details. They already knew it. Nobody had any idea of any kind of court case possibilities, or we didn't really have a vision of like, this could be something that...
Well, we didn't start this for... the funny thing is now, everything happens for a reason. We started the lawsuit wasn't started in any kind of means to make money. The building stood. It was fully colorful.
Yeah.
We were trying to save a building. We weren't even trying to take the building from the landlord. We were trying to open his eyes to see the
value in it.
Value and importance in it, and to perhaps maybe alter your plan. Like, build your towers, keep the shell. There's so many options that could have. There was no conversation, no dialogue, and we wanted to first and foremost save the building and the art on it, and in the worst case scenario, have the time to document correctly and save as much of this, what we would call temple, for future generations to be able to enjoy and see, even if it was just in a museum. And we were robbed of that.
The funny thing is, it's been now, it's almost 2020. It's almost 2020.
5 or 6
Yeah,
years.
we're almost on 6 going on to 7, and like, in this time, I remember when it happened, like a month later, people were like, so are you guys gonna get another building? So what's gonna happen next? So are you guys gonna do? So where's the next thing? You know, are you gonna get permission for another wall? Where, you know, and it was like this thing of like this. People just imagine this like instant gratification of like being able to do something, and it was so easy. Just go do it again. And it's been this much time, and nobody has. Why? Because it wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy. And you know what? I don't get mad at people. I think everybody. Some people are more vocal in how upset they were or bothered by the loss of it. Some people act like it doesn't mean shit, and to some it may not, and to some it does. I think people, in dealing with their emotional, loss of it or whatever, don't think about the full spectrum of things, and they say, hey, you're gonna start another one, you should, and don't realize, when you build 12 years or something and it gets not only taken away from you, you get slapped in the face by the individual that let you create it.
And without getting into the case, but continually, still to this day, no closure, bashed.
It's not as easy as you think. And you know what? For everyone that may have liked 5 Points or maybe don't give a shit about it or loved 5 Points, you weren't there 12 years every day. So imagine if you were there 12 years every day.
Exactly.
And just imagine how much more that would have been a blow. They don't necessarily, and I don't knock people, because everyone's their own person, and sometimes people don't take the time to think outside of their specific scenario and think about how you might feel, and they speak fast, so I don't get bothered, but that is the scenario. And would I, and you gotta also say, would you do the same thing twice? If you create a clothing store and you build up a brand and you create this brand, and the brand is great, you had a great time, it did amazing, but for whatever the reason it got stale and old and crashed, would you want to start another brand and create the same exact journey with a different name and do it again?
Well, that's where I think people have to educate themselves on what 5 Points was, to understand that it was more than just a brand. It's not a brand or a clothing brand or a store that opens, closes, and now you could just open a store again. It's not that. That works for commercial entities. There is no way to redo this. And if it was organic. And if you do it again, you got to do it wiser, because it didn't end like we're just going out of business, chapter whatever. It wasn't that. It now there's repercussions, there's learning lessons, and if we go back into it to do it again, you got to do it now smarter, and you have to do it. Now we know you have to do it with some legal coverage.
Of course.
And there's a lot of things that now change the game to do that again. Can people out there, graffiti artists in New York, graffiti artists in the world, can you get legal walls? Yeah, go ahead, get legal walls. You can get written permission. You can talk about VARA rights. You can talk about all the legalities with the person you're working with, the landlord or whoever it is that you're getting a legal wall from. This doesn't affect you guys in that way. It just makes you more aware, and you guys can still get legal walls. But when you talk about can you do another 5 Points, that's very unlikely. It's very unlikely that you're going to be able to do another 5 Points without a lot of preparation and a lot of experience.
And part of, and I'm going to be honest, it's the building it to what it was without any kind of idea or expectation is what made it where it can never be done again. Like, and there's no way I would be able to do it again without having a set plan in my head, without knowing what we were able to achieve and what's possible to achieve. It's not the same. It would never have that same, ooh-ah factor.
I mean, I remember going, to South America and painting, and then having like somebody talk to me and be like, "Yo, I met you at 5 Points, blah 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 blah," and I was blown away by that. I was like, "Holy shit!" I no offense to the person, but I didn't remember them because I met so many people at 5 Points.
My world.
Yeah, I mean, you met so many people on a daily basis, but the fact that it opened you up to a global community. I went to Spain. I was in Spain, painting in Spain in a place called Lleida, it's out in the outskirts of Barcelona, and last place that I would expect meeting somebody at a graffiti jam telling me I met you at 5 Points. shout out, hey, send a shout out to Mears for me, man. Like, it was so great painting there. That was so amazing for me. Such a great experience. I can't wait to go back to New York. Like that, I never imagined that in my whole life. Back in the 90s, never imagined that location would become that kind of vehicle. And I just don't think that I would go to paint at some graffiti jam now and get that same feedback.
Yeah.
It's not that thing. It's not a community. I know that.
Connecticut, get your streets together.
All right. So, to sum it up, best memories of 5 Points, or best takeaway from 5 Points. Best learning lesson, maybe.
I you know what? I may have tried to ask a little more for help, or tried to have. You can't. Everything happens for a reason, and you're never gonna get it this is it. You're never gonna get everything right. Here. How do I get in there? Everything happens for a reason, and I like to say, if I would have applied for grants, if I would have reached out for help. I was very inverted. I don't know how to write grants and do all of that stuff. I didn't want to ask anyone for anything. I didn't want it to become where we ask for, in my head, you ask for something, they want something.
Yeah.
That's
you difficult.
And you know what? I could have asked maybe for a little more assistance, or tried to. We were very inverted. We were our own community. I didn't reach out to the neighborhood. I didn't try to, maybe if we would have reached out and got more familiar with the arts, Queens Council of the Arts, and this, and established a relationship, they would have seen more of the value of what we had and maybe fought for us.
Yeah. That's what makes it hard, for any graffiti artists out there that, or real estate people out there that want to invent a new 5 Points because they got excited about the story and the headlines. There's a lot more to it than just getting a legal permission and getting some artists.
Yeah.
All right, man. Yo, Mears, thank you so much for sharing stories with us. Just be crazy, go in through the do not enter. It's all right. That's what happens when you're driving and podcasting. But, thanks for sharing, man. I appreciate it. Until the next drive.